What's up, everybody? This is Chris Nichols, and you're listening to an episode of the Nichols and Dimes Show featuring Maximo Mandl. Enjoy.
You don't know what I'm about to do. Big explosion, get away right now. She's heating up, so acting full. Slow down, man, I just don't know how. You don't know what I'm about.
Maximo, my man, what's up?
There we go.
Here we go, baby.
Excited to be here. Come on.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, gosh, for almost 2023, it's been a hell of a year, huh?
What, 2 more days?
Something like that, yeah.
2 more days and we're there?
Seriously, yeah. Gosh, what a year it's been, and we'll talk about that. All right, guys, I just want to introduce my good homie here, Maximo. Maximo Mandl, who's become very popular in the San Diego electronic music scene as a DJ, and has also built a career selling real estate.
Yes,
which is perfectly described by his Instagram bio, quote, selling houses by day, making house music by night, quote. You gotta love that. Maximo is originally from Seattle, but also spent time growing up in New Zealand. Since then, he has lived in St. Augustine, Florida, Santa Cruz, and currently lives in San Diego. What a life, huh?
Man, I've lived... Honestly, I can't even tell you how many houses I've moved into. It's got to be up in like the 12 or 13s as far as like homes lived. Places, I think this is the 6th or 7th place I've lived. Yeah. So yeah, let's go through the list. Seattle, grew up in Seattle. Mm-hmm. 2nd grade, moved to New Zealand. Lived in New Zealand 6 years. Briefly moved to Australia with my dad for a quick year.
Australia,
like not even a year. It was like so. Sadly, my parents were separating at that time, so I was going to I enrolled to go to high school, which they call college in Australia, but I enrolled for college out there, and then my mom's like, no, you're moving back to the States for high school, so that's when I went back to Seattle for a little bit, finished up high school. Then I was like, all right, where else can I go where it's going to be a ton of fun in college, and it's going to be like warm and relatively cheap because I got to pay for it myself. And I was like, oh, Florida, let's go.
Yeah.
So I think I was paying like $350 or $400 a month to live right on the beach in Florida with some friends.
Different times, huh?
Way different. Well, it's also just way cheaper, but yeah, it has gone up since then. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was in St. Augustine, Florida, and that's kind of, it's more north. It's like right above Daytona Beach, right under Jacksonville.
Yep.
So lived there for about 3.5 years. And then I was like, what the heck am I going to do after college? Like every college student, you know, unless they have like some kind of job lined up. So I decided that I was going to move to Santa Cruz because they had really good surf and I wanted to live in California. And my friend had like an opening at his place in Santa Cruz. So I was like, sure, I'll cruise up there. And like, honestly, it was going to be a very short-term thing. It was going to be like, let's hang out here for the summer. I was with my buddy Marco. We did like a huge road trip and we're like, let's hang out here for the summer and see how we like it. And then ended up living there almost 3 years, getting a job at Enterprise Rent-A-Car.
Okay.
Which was like the hardest thing in the world. It was like 60-hour work weeks. Not quite, but they were some work weeks were like 55 hours.
Yeah.
So it was just very very, very hard on like my personal life, personal time, you know? So after that, you know, I just kind of got burned out after like 3 years of that. So I was like, okay, I had always wanted to move to San Diego. I had some friends down here. I was like, let's just send it. And packed up all my stuff, told my job I'm leaving, and they were really cool. They're like, yeah, we have offices down there. So I ended up moving down there with Enterprise, got a job still with them, and then realized like it wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. So that's when I kind of had to make a decision. I was like, what the heck am I going to do? So I ended up applying, getting my real estate license, had some money saved up, traveled for like 6 months, lived in a van.
Wow.
In Australia and Bali, basically. So that's when I
didn't know you're in Bali, too.
Yeah,
wow.
Man, that's when I got inspired to actually start making music again. I'd always been super into making dance music. It was actually more like when the dubstep trend was really hitting in like 2011, 2012, like right when I was kind of graduating high school. So I was doing more like dubstep, chill step at the time in college, and then I like kind of put it down for like 5 years because, you know, other life things happened. And then I just got really inspired again when I traveled. I was like, man, I love making music. I love just creating stuff, right? Whether it's creating art or just building things or just being creative in general.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's just a really fun thing to do.
Dude, that's my favorite thing about traveling.
Yeah.
Is that when that creativity, bone just gets woken up.
Totally, man. And I think spending, personally, it was like a lot of, it was like coming from this very like corporate America structured lifestyle. Like every 5 minutes was like there's something to be done. Yeah. And it was like the opposite when I was traveling. I just traveled by myself solo. I had a ton of free time. So it really, sparked a lot of different interests, right? So I was like, okay, I'm just naturally more of an entrepreneur. I was like, what can I do? Okay, I want to I obviously applied, got my real estate license, so I can kind of have some income coming in, but also I wanted to pursue, being creative and being a musician and, getting to play some of these festivals, which I've been lucky enough to play. And, just have a ton of fun with it. Like obviously I have like a natural expectation of where I want to be, but at the same time, I just want to have a ton of fun and meet a ton of cool people and really enjoy the creative process and really enjoy, getting lucky enough to play some of these really cool gigs or really cool shows, So, anyways, I kind of went all out with that question, but yeah, that's kind of, those are all the places I've lived, and that's kind of what sparked where I'm at now,
Yeah.
So.
Gosh, I mean, just the attitude you described is, I think it's absolutely the right one, and I'm trying to have the same one. Just doing this podcast, right?
Right.
It's like it's really leading with a mindset of gratitude. I think that's kind of what I gathered. Yeah. Absolutely,
man. Yeah, and I think the one really cool thing about where we live, not just in San Diego, but San Diego coastal, Pacific Beach, kind of. The age group we're in, the people we're around, I think there's just a lot of, really positive energy and a lot of entrepreneurs where people are really trying to think outside the box. And I think that's, it's really helpful to be around that culture because it really does, influence our decisions, right? The people we're around and the people we hang out with and just the attitude that people have around here. There are a lot of entrepreneurs like my buddy Chase that started Blenders, my other friend, Stevie, he started Ho Stevie, his brand, and that's crushing it on Amazon. So just being around, like a lot of these other entrepreneurs, that abundance mindset, really has helped me keep pursuing, music in that way, right? Because it's just there's a big support system here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so true, and it's certainly had an impact on me as well since I moved here, and it's a large reason why I've fallen in love with this community out here, because it encouraged me to think outside the box a little bit than where I used to live, San Francisco, for example, right? It's very narrow-minded with you work for some tech corporation and you do this, right? There's just a lot more expansion of thought and what you can do with your life, I think, down here, whether that's your career or also your fun. Right?
Lifestyle, man. Well, that's the coolest thing. It's like, with my career, I want to combine it with who I am, my lifestyle, like my thoughts, my ideas, like, and even my clients, I'll kind of joke around and like, talk about how I love surfing, talk about how I love music and playing gigs on New Year's, like you got to have fun with it, and I think people that are my clients or people that are working with me, respect that, they see how authentic I am and how I just want to have a ton of fun. And obviously I work, I try to work as hard as I can, but I want to be as authentic and personable and friendly and just stoked. Really, just at the end of the day, just stoked.
That's amazing. So guys, just for some context, Max and I used to be neighbors. That's how we originally became friends when I first moved to San Diego. And here we are today, and gosh, a lot has changed. You're busy as hell. You got shows all over the place, and I mean, and you're still doing real estate, and I want to talk about that balance in a little bit, but I mean, maybe, and you touched on it in the answer to the first question I had, but like, what was it that got you into making music originally?
Yeah, I mean, where do I start? I've always just been around it. My dad was in a band when I was growing up. He played bass and was like the backup singer in like a ska kind of punk rock band during like kind of the late 80s, early 90s era, which was kind of I'd say kind of towards the end of that punk rock era, until like obviously pop punk came out in like the early 2000s. There was like that next big surge with you know, Green Day, Blink-182, all those guys. But so, you know, from a young age, I learned drums when I was 5, and then he would kind of you know, try to show me guitar here and there, and I kind of picked that up. I've just always been around it, always interested in it, and honestly, like I grew up with more rock and roll, less, you know, dance music or electronic music. I grew up with more of a rock and roll kind of background with like the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix. Sure. You know, like loved Jim Morrison, The Doors, and then obviously that whole kind of like 90s era rock growing up in Seattle at the time, that was a big influence. So I've definitely seen a lot of different generations of music through my family and influenced in a lot of different ways, and just always been around it. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't until recently where I was like, oh, I can, you know, make this like a thing, and I can like do this and get paid, and like it's a ton of fun, you know. Not that's my whole priority behind it, but it's like, you know, now it's with the internet and like how fast things can move. It's pretty cool how, you know, I can get signed to a record label, my stuff goes on Spotify or Beatport, and then it's like next thing you know, I'm getting like these crazy numbers, or like people are downloading my music from all over the world and then playing it at their shows, you know. So that's kind of the really fun thing about the DJ world, you know. It's like we have kind of these different platforms, and it's just got this like really sharing characteristic to it, where, you know, I'll be downloading people's music that are in a whole different country, and then you know, vice versa, right? People are downloading my music, playing it all over the world, and it's just kind of got this unique characteristic to where it's like house music is kind of international, right? There's no, you know, like there's just so many countries that appreciate it and can listen to it, you know. So I think that's what has been really really fun in being in this kind of house music scene, and specifically kind of like the underground scene, you know, the tech house, melodic tech house, whatever you want to call it, even acid house. I'm kind of in that whole bundle of, you know, not the mainstream Martin Garrix, David Guetta kind of house, but more like that, you know, underground style. So it's fun. Like even some of my favorite artists are like my friends, you know, and that's really, it's been a really cool process, like being like, damn, this guy likes my music, like I look up to this guy, you know. Next thing you know, he's like telling me like, congrats on the last release, or like that new song you're working on looks sick, you know. So it's that's the one really fun thing about the community and the music I make. It's like, you know, some of the biggest guys in the space are also like sharing it with me, you know.
See, so I think that's already like well into your way, right? Into your career as a DJ, when you get big names starting to congratulate you on your work. Right. I think a lot of people would be interested, certainly I am, like the build up before that, because I know you mentioned you were working on it for fun, right, in college. Yeah. And then you took a few years, a breather, doing, you know, corporate work, just getting your career moving, trying to make money. I mean, and then you got back into it after you traveled. Like, how do you describe that build up of, you know, the time when you got into it before you would say you really blew up, and then getting recognized? Yeah, well, man, honestly, in my mind, I definitely have not blown up. I still have like so much to work on and so much on the agenda, you know? I mean, my gosh, just like in San Diego you have, but it's like, I respect the hell out of that answer though.
Yeah, I mean, there is no like, hey, I'm going to get here and that's like the end, right? You're always trying to grow, you're always trying to expand, you're always trying to be unique with your music too, right? I think, I guess just touching on that for a sec, I mean, so many people in like the tech house scene, you know, or even house scene, right? There's just so many people that try to sound like everybody else. Yeah. And it's like, and you know, sometimes I'll get influenced for sure, and I'm like, I'm really into this song and I want to make something like it. Of course, like we all do, right? We're all influenced by certain musicians, but it's like, how can you really stand out and be unique? You know, like one of our buddies, John Summit, right? Like he just kind of came out of kind of that Fisher-esque sound and then did his own thing with it. You know, now he's kind of like taking over that space because he was different, because he was unique, and he's just got amazing branding. with who he is and his lifestyle, you know.
So would you say it's more the branding that he puts together and the marketing of himself as an artist and as a person, or the specific sound within the genre?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And honestly, man, like I've learned so much more like along the way, because I really thought it was just your music, but it's really not. I mean, it's a big part of it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's what your fans are going to be listening to you for, is your music, but they also want to see who you are as like a person. They want to get to know you, like whether it's on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, right? I mean, so much of it is like your personal brand behind it. You selling merchandise, you know, posting funny stuff like on your stories, or just like keeping engagement, right? With your fan base. So there's just so much more nowadays than just the music, for better or for worse. I mean, that's just how it is. But what's also cool is it's connected everything on so much like more of a hyper connected level, to where like I'm chatting with these artists on Instagram that are massive, and then they're like asking me for songs, I'm asking them for songs. And I think that's what's really cool now, is more independent labels are coming up.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was just like Capitol Records, Atlantic, you know, these, you know, Columbia, like these huge record labels that I just, you know, personally would probably never get on. But now there's just so many, there's like hundreds of underground labels that are stoked to listen to your demos. And it's really cool, because a lot of these big artists started with those smaller labels and built their way up. Even Calvin Harris was like, mentioned something I think on Instagram the other day, made a post, and it was talking about how he wrote a letter back in the day to Defected Records, kind of before the internet. I mean, there's probably the internet, but it was still like, here's my demos in a letter, and it was handwritten, and they wrote him back. They're like, hey man,
crazy.
they're like, hey Calvin, great tunes, not for us right now. And it was just like, you know, for him now on the level he's at, it's like, of course, but that's the same thing, right? Like everybody gets denied, and you're gonna have to go through those 99 no's maybe to get that one yes that's gonna put you on that next level, right? And I've had a lot of that this year, right? I've had a lot of successes, but I've also had a ton of fails where I'm like, I wanted to get on Insomniac Records, right? Like they were reviewing me. I wanted to get on these other big labels, right? And in my mind, it's like, shoot, man, I totally should have had this, or that should have happened. But at the same time, it's like, look where I started, you know, trust the process, keep doing it. And you know, the fortune's in following up and keep going, you know, and not stopping. So I don't know what the question was, but I'm going on a rant here.
Dude, that's what
I don't know if I answered that question. I don't even remember what it was.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's cool. I you know, I'm just trying to because the question comes from a place of, I have seen so many people try to be DJs over the years, right?
Sure.
Like whether it was in college, and you know, some guys were good in their communities, right? I remember the guys who were like the go-to, like, oh, this guy is playing at this house party, everyone's going. Like this is the one that everyone knows, or after that in different communities. And I mean, it just seems like, you know, just like music in general, right? Everyone's or you're trying to be an actor, right? Trying to be an entertainer in some way.
Sure.
It's very busy, very crowded.
Super saturated.
And the question was coming from a place of, you know, and I know there's a lot of different factors, but how do you really stand out, especially in the world of EDM or of electronic music and house music? You know, and it sounds like what I gather from your answer is, you know, there's a lot more emphasis that you got to think about in terms of marketing yourself instead of just trying to distinguish yourself from the sound. And I do think that there's a trend with a lot of these artists that blow up when they get, you know, interviewed about their success, and you know, a lot of them do say right place, right time. Obviously, they all have talent, and there's a lot more people who people probably will never hear of who are talented, right?
Of course.
So, I mean, a big emphasis on the marketing of your brand is kind of what I'm taking away.
And that's it, man. I mean, and so much of that, like labels and agencies, whether it's a talent agency or a label, they want to see that you've already built a brand. Like, it's not like you could have a epic track. You could have like a 10 out of 10 best produced track, but if you're a nobody, no offense, like the label, they're like, how are we going to gain any traction? This could be a great track, a great tune, But it's like they're going to be signing the Vintage Cultures, the Hugels, they're going to be signing the Fishers, the John Summits, because they've already built such a brand that, you know, for the label, they don't have to do that much marketing, because that person putting that track out already is going to have so much traction. So much traction behind it. So that's part of it, you know, and you're going to get those 99 no's to get that one yes. But it's like, one thing I've really learned from this year is like, maybe don't put all your eggs in one basket going for like these big, massive labels. It's like, this coming year, I'm going to start with kind of some of these smaller labels that have actually reached out to me asking for tracks, you know, and I'm going to kind of start from ground zero and start getting a lot of these tracks that I've been working on out. And then just kind of build that following, because I've already built a pretty solid following just on my own without like, let's say, a talent agency or without a label to really help out. So that's one thing as an independent artist nowadays. Like, labels, agencies, they want to see that you've already built a foundation, and then they can come in and say, hey, we're WME, we can take over now. Like, that now that you've already built such a following, like, we'll just take you to the next level. We'll get you booked for Coachella, we'll get you booked for EDC, we'll get you booked for all these big festivals. So that's how it works. So.
It's like going on Shark Tank. It's like going on Shark Tank, and they ask, you know, what are your sales? You know, how much progress have you made, right?
Same concept, really. They want to see that you're already a successful business, right? Like, I'm a business owner for my own brand, like, and they want to see, have you been successful? Like, can you bring a big crowd? Do you have do you have a big following on, whether it's SoundCloud, Spotify, Instagram, whatever, you know, they want to see that you've already built something, you know? So.
No, that's awesome. Let's just transition for a bit. I want to understand how, maybe over the past 4 or 5 years in particular, you've balanced your career, your day job of selling houses, and then building, you know, making house music by night, doing your DJ stuff, making music. How have you balanced your time with this?
For sure. Great question. And honestly, for the record, the music has basically made me a break even at this point, because there's just so much I've invested into it, whether it's the equipment, the software, just different programs. Like, I have this really cool Moog sub 37 synthesizer that's $2,000, and I got it used for a little cheaper, but still, like, you know, you got to invest in your brand, right? So really that has been a break even thing. Like, I get paid for New Year's, I get, a solid paid gig, but then I just funnel that back into, you know, my brand, my marketing. You know, I want to reinvest into it. So honestly, the music has been the passion project. The real estate has been, you know, keeping me afloat, keeping me going, right? And honestly, it has been tricky at times to balance it, you know. But really, I really prioritize my time, you know. And that's been a big thing for health reasons and just friendships and everything. So it's like, hey, you know, my mornings, that's my time to do stuff, whether I work out, you know, whether I go surf, and then I have like a time block for my day, like whatever it looks like. And some days are super slow with real estate, you know, especially now that we're about to hit the new year, you know, we're right after Christmas, you know, it kind of falls off during this time. So it really gives me a lot of opportunity to say, okay, now I can put more time in my music bucket and start working on more projects, like start reaching out to singers. You know, there's always stuff I can be doing. It's not like, hey, I'm twiddling my thumbs, there's nothing going on. Like, that's one thing that really got me into the music when I was, you know, still kind of getting my feet wet with real estate, meeting new clients. I still had a ton of stuff I could be doing with music, you know? So I guess to answer your question with the balance, I'm gonna have some slow days with real estate, which gives me more time with music. I'm gonna have maybe 3 gigs in like a week, usually not, maybe two or 3 gigs for the month, and that'll kind of keep me going with that, you know. Because I also try to get projects done in time so I can play them at gigs, you know, and test out some new songs that I'm working on. So yeah, I mean, it comes and goes in waves, you know. So when I do have some downtime where I'm not meeting a bunch of clients or showing a bunch of houses, that gives me a ton of time to work on music. You know?
Yeah, and just off that, I was going to ask about if you have some sort of structure that you follow to split the time for these categories. But it really sounds like you got to roll with the punches. I mean, that is life, but especially with how the music scene goes, and when you're getting booked for shows, some opportunities you just cannot turn down.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, holidays, I know I got to be in town because I'm either playing New Year's or I'm playing some kind of Thanksgiving party. Like, because you got to think about, like, the people that go to these shows, usually, like, a younger demographic, like, a lot of the times it's, like, college kids or post-college kids that are coming.
Sure.
And that time is, like, usually holiday time when they're off, or that's when big shows are happening. So obviously, like New Year's, and then summer season, that's when festival season happens. So I'm like, I just got to be ready, because that's when usually real estate's pretty hot.
Yep.
Spring, summer, and that's when festival season's hot. So that's when I'm just going.
Yep.
So winter's like usually my time to just chill and make music a lot of the time, and then summer it's like I'm not making that much music because I'm getting booked, and I'm pretty busy during the day. Mm-hmm. So
wow. And I imagine the goal, of course, is to continue moving towards the DJ side of things.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, obviously I have natural expectations of like where I want to be, and like
are you able to share any of those?
I mean, obviously I reset some of my goals that were on my whiteboard here, but one of them for this year was to for next year was going to be to play at EDC. I don't know if that's going to happen just because I didn't sign some of those records with Insomniac yet, but those are some of the goals. And like, obviously I really want to play Do-Lab at Coachella, and I don't know if I should be saying this, but I think DJ Susan, my good buddy, is going to be playing the Do-Lab this year at Coachella. So it's like, it's just cool. It's like, wow, like my buddies are doing this shit, and it's like, that influences me to like work harder. It's like, cool, like he's doing it, and obviously his agency has helped a lot with these big bookings, but it's cool to see like your buddies are playing like these massive stages, like he got to play Sahara stage last year at Coachella, so
that's like, sorry I just interrupt, but that's a huge part of what I noticed too, just the networking side of this game, especially with DJs.
Massive,
huge
networking, and also getting tight with some of these big artists that will, play your tracks out or introduce you to the right people to kind of get you to the next level. So it's like, I think that's definitely the benefit to, signing with some of these smaller labels.
Yeah.
Even though they're like pretty independent labels, there's still, big artists that are looking through these and they're going to support your tracks and support your music. Yeah. And, it really does bring you to the kind of the next tier. Really, there's just tiers. It's like you get to that tier, and then there's another tier, and then it's like you can keep going. There's no like, I got it, I'm playing Coachella. It's like, nah, I'm going to the next tier, and then I got to break through the next tier after that. Yeah.
It's so funny you just said that, because my next question literally was going to be, well, what one significant moment in your music career would you point to that would you say made you break out like big time? I mean, you just gave me an answer of there's tiers, but is there a way you can answer that question? Like, can you point to one kind of like the first two or three maybe breakthrough moments?
Yeah, there's. I mean, I would say, I guess I could go a few ways with that question, but the big breakthrough moment, honestly, was putting my music out in the first place. And I think as an independent artist, that's the hardest thing you can do, is starting. Because once you start, you can keep growing. It'll just, it's like a fungus, like a mushroom. It's like, it just keeps growing, right? Yeah. Like, but the hardest part is just starting. Yeah. The hardest part is like those insecurities that are like, oh no, my tracks aren't ready. I'm not ready to put these out. I'm worried that I'm not going to get any plays on Spotify, so right, or, you know, but once you, like doing this podcast, right? Like once you start, once you put the effort in and you've told your brain like, no, I'm doing this. It's happening. There's action behind it. Yeah. I have a deadline. My deadline is this day. I'm putting my music out. And that's something I've really struggled with the last year, because I've been talking to all these massive labels. I'm like, no, I'll just wait. I'll wait till one of these really cool labels signs it, and then I'm going to go on tour. Like, in my mind, like, that's how I'm thinking. But it's like, no. Like, I need to focus on me, not what the labels are doing or what their release schedule is. Yeah. Like, I need to still focus on building my brand. So, breakthrough moment, number one was putting my music out in the first place, which was... just over 3 years ago now. Okay. And then just like retaining it and just keep going. There's
Consistency,
man, with anything you do in your life. It's like being consistent and being passionate about something, like no matter what, it's gonna succeed in some kind of way, right? If you just keep going, like your music doesn't even have to be that good, but if you just keep going and keep growing, your sound's going to develop. You're eventually going to just get better and better and better naturally by you putting in the work every day, you know, and being inspired to do it. So I mean, yeah, I've played some really cool gigs, like Same But Different Festival. I played that last year. I've played Splash House twice now, which is like one of my favorite festivals. Hopefully I'm playing again this year. I would love to. And then, you know, obviously, like, next goals are Coachella. Next goal is EDC. You know, like, I want to get in with...
Let's go, baby.
Insomniac, because... And another cool show is, you know, playing the Insomniac show with Cascade, you know?
Oh, my God. Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that. That was huge. But... So that I want to ask about the first answer you gave, and those are great answers, by the way. Like just getting started, getting the music out there. When you first, I guess you could say publicized or released your music publicly, what does that process consist of? You're working with Apple Music, Spotify, so forth. Like, could you just give us an idea?
Yeah. So when I was doing independent releases, I was going through a website called DistroKid. There's a few. There's that one's really popular. There's also CD Baby. So anybody can, you know, kind of sign up on these websites essentially, and then it's basically a platform. Then it syndicates to all those different platforms that release it, like Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, all those, right? Amazon Music's even got one. So basically, DistroKid just, you know, hosts it and then syndicates it to all those websites. But now, you know, I haven't really done that many self-releases lately because I'm sending my stuff to labels, and then the label, you know, is in charge of releasing it. But that's what makes it really cool, man. Like, you might not have a sound that a label is going for, but it's like, I'm still going to release it, you know, on my own. And some people, like, there's another artist, Kayvon, for example, like, he pretty much only self-releases stuff. And then he still plays these massive gigs, which is cool because he's built his own, like, kind of cult following on his own.
That's
and
sick.
Gets to play these huge gigs and then gets 100% of his royalties because they're all released under his own name, you know, which is great, which is the goal, really.
Yeah.
As an artist, you want to, like, kind of use these labels short term and then be like, all right, I've built my following, my network. Now I'm going to kind of create my own label, right? So you see these guys like Lee Foss created Repopulate Mars. John Summit created Off the Grid. You know, there's a lot more independent labels that are coming up because, you know, it's your way to kind of, one, build your brand off that and have other artists releasing on your label, and then you kind of get 100% of, you know, your own releases, right? So
no, it makes sense.
That's kind of what's the goal, really, in this industry.
Yeah, that's, gosh, you know, one thing I've been curious about is your favorite. I want to know what your, I guess, favorite show ever has been, both, you know, favorite or most impactful show as somebody attending in the audience, and then as the performer. And it could be, this might be a hard question because I'm sure there's a lot for both, but is there one that stands out as an audience member? Like, it could have been when you were a kid, or
when I saw an artist that really inspired me.
Sure, yeah.
Probably when I snuck out of my house in high school and saw Skrillex for the first time when I was like 16 years old. And this was like the first time Skrillex was touring.
Oh man.
Because I think, like, he had just kind of put out a few records and gained a little bit of traction, and then, like, literally blew up overnight. He was like nobody, coming from first to last, like his last kind of like screamo punk band. Yeah. And then he just kind of started releasing a few songs that were big in like Asia. And then he came out with the first EP, My Name is Skrillex, when I was 16. And that like right after he released that, like 2 or 3 months later, he came out with like Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites. Yeah. And then he came, like a few days later after that, he came to Seattle and I saw him, and it was like insane. And I was like, damn, this is cool. I want to learn how the heck I can make this music, right?
That's sick.
So that was just really eye-opening. And we were like right in the front, and it was just, you know, when you're 16, and just like that really like heavy energy, right?
Oh my
like,
gosh.
It was just very impactful. But yeah, that was probably like my most memorable electronic show that really influenced me, that I was like, wow, this is like so unique. And it was just a different, like at the time, like obviously Skrillex isn't really that relevant anymore, but at the time this was,
Yeah, he was
like,
huge. I remember.
this was like, now that would have been 12 or 13 years ago, sadly. I don't want to say my age over the podcast. I'm not that old, but like, that was like 12 years ago, man.
Yeah.
So like, you think about that sound that like, it was the sound that people were really craving that wasn't there yet. It was like kind of the future of that genre, you know?
Yeah.
Because before that was just more of that UK dubstep sound, and Skrillex really commercialized it.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I right around that time I went to a Skrillex show in Oakland. I remember it was probably 2015, 2014. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was like 2010, bro.
Yeah, this is okay.
This was 5 years before that.
Jeez,
this was
dude.
like right when he was releasing his first stuff on like Big Beat Records, and like when it was like totally independent. Like he wasn't even sure if he was gonna make it yet. He was like, I just want to put stuff out, and then he like gained a massive following over the internet. Like he was one of those like guys that just blew up through the internet. You know?
See, that's so cool, because I feel like when you see somebody that early, you build a
because nobody really knew who he was yet.
Right.
They're like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Skrillex? What?
Yeah, but like you build this like relationship that only with somebody, and then you have a special connection with somebody because you saw them, you knew them before they blew up, I think, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
even I feel that way about certain artists, right? It's like, okay, yeah, I see you on the main stage of Coachella now.
Or it's like seeing what the sound's gonna be, and it was kind of like I was like, dude, this is gonna be the sound like next year. This is the sound, and like totally, there was like so many people that tried to copy that sound, you know, and that was like a whole generation of music that was influenced. So that was very impactful, very cool, and obviously, what's cool now is we're going back to the kind of that early 90s house, which is cool. It's super retro, you know, and that's what's really relevant in 2023 coming in, you know?
Dude, well, seriously,
that sound that was big 30 years ago, you know.
So okay, Skrillex for as an audience member, that's a great answer. How about as a performer?
Yeah, as a performer, I mean, it's hard to say like what one show was really fun. I mean, same but different. Had a really cool venue. It was like on the beach, on the sand.
Which one is this?
The festival out. It's in Lake Paris. It's a festival out there.
Okay.
And this was about a year and a half ago now that I played, but just a really cool venue, man. Like it was on like the stage was literally on the sand, and people were dancing like on the sand and in the water.
That's cool. Just the environment.
Just the environment, right? Like I'm big on environment, and then the way they set up all the lights and the stage, and they had like, you know, my logo all set up there. It was just a really super vibey. It was like almost like, you know, dance music meets hippie.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of, it wasn't Burning Man, it wasn't Splash House, but it was kind of in between those two. And then obviously when I played Splash House last year, that was just so fun seeing how many people actually showed up to my set.
Yeah.
The owner came and he was like, hey, just so you know, man, like this is the most packed stage right now out of all 3 stages. And I was like, no way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, that's crazy to think about. Like, I'm at the same time as like a bunch of other major artists, and like I've still, like, so many people came to support me, you know. It's not that like, oh, I needed my ego checked, but it was just a cool like natural reward. Like, damn, like this is cool that like people are stoked to come watch me, you know. Or people that didn't know me were there. They're like, dude, this is good music, like, you know.
Yeah. So that's good.
Yeah, I'd say like those 2 shows were really fun.
Yeah.
And obviously playing with Cascade was another really fun one too.
That's what I want to ask you about next. Yeah. Because that, you know, I think a lot of people opened their eyes in a major way when they saw that. And I personally think that was a huge jump for you in growth, right? As far as getting
it's a big flex.
Yeah, big flex.
Bicep flex. It's like, yep, sharing the stage with Cascade. We're going back to back here.
So could you just, dude, I mean, that one's interesting to me because I love Cascade. I think a lot of people do.
Well, he's just huge.
He's huge.
You don't even need to really like the music. Like, my mom knows who he is, you know?
Yeah.
So.
How did that come together? Because I know you were in Europe right before that, and, you know, and I was there right after you, but I remember you just flew back and within a few days you're like, hey guys, I'm opening up for Cascade at Nova.
I flew back and like within I think an 18-hour period I had to get ready and play this show.
Dude, how did this come together?
So one of the booking agents for Insomniac basically has well, I've actually been booked at that club before at Nova.
Yep.
And I played with Nicky Romero, but Cascade was just
you did that too. Okay,
I did that too.
I do remember that. Yeah. Wow.
But Cascade is just a whole nother ballgame. Like that's probably the biggest artist they booked, and I think they paid like I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but like $250K for that 1 hour that he played, which is just
Wow.
I don't even know how you can make money on that. But anyways, like just a whole different category. Yeah. So I was in Greece at the time, and one of the booking agent for Insomniac, I'm not going to give any names out, but she reached out and asked if I was available, and I was like, yeah, send over all the details to my management and we'll get it figured out. And I luckily was going to come home at that time anyways to San Diego, and I didn't have a return flight, but it was like, hey, we want to book you in, I think it was like 10 days out. So I had some time, and I was like, cool, like I'm supposed to be here another, I can't remember if I was in Ibiza at the time or I was headed to Greece when I got the
So it's beginning of the trip,
the gig. No, it wasn't the beginning. It was like towards the end. I think they wanted to book me, but anyways, like I did kind of say it was good timing because my trip was going to kind of end anyways.
Yeah.
But the hard thing is, for anybody that's trying to fly out of Mykonos back to the U.S., it is so difficult, or at least during the summer.
Oh, man.
It was the most difficult. It was like, I can't even remember how many hours of flying. It was like, I want to say close to 40 hours or something.
That's ridiculous.
I had to go from Mykonos to Manchester. Okay. Had a stupid layover, like an 8-hour layover in Manchester, like crashed out.
Yeah.
Manchester to Iceland. Had another like 4-hour layover in Iceland. Iceland to Newark, right?
I remember this.
In New York. And then I had another like 3-hour layover in New York. And then finally got back to San Diego. I was like, dude, this was the worst. Jeez. The worst experience flying. I mean, I don't think I've ever traveled for that long. But there was just, honestly, my friend Monroe and I were looking at flights and there was nothing. Mm-hmm. And I think I booked the last ticket that was available for all those airlines. So as soon as I booked it, we were going to book at the same time. He was like, my app just closed me down. It said it's not available.
Oh my gosh.
He had to get on a whole another flight, but we ended up getting back around the same time. I think he was like just after me, but
just different routes. Yeah.
It was, he had to go like somewhere else in the UK and not to Iceland. I had to go to Iceland, which was cool.
Oh yeah.
I got to see that airport and take a few photos of Iceland.
That is cool. Did you get out of the airport?
No, I wish. I didn't have enough time.
Another time.
If I had like 8 hours like in Manchester.
Right.
But Manchester was gross. I just stayed in the airport. I was like, I'm not leaving.
But if you weren't going to open up for Cascade 2 days later,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, oh. But it was fun, man. It was a really good experience going to Europe as well this summer.
Yeah.
So, no regrets.
Well, I mean, my next question is actually, what is your biggest highlight and the biggest challenge of 2022? You might have touched on what those are, but I want to hear what you
honestly think. Yeah. So maybe a few of those festivals were big highlights, but the coolest thing was actually meeting my buddy Rowan, Second City, at Splash House.
Okay.
And we just kind of connected, and it came up in conversation that I was going to be going to Ibiza, and he's like, well, what dates are you going? And he was like, you're going to be there right after me. If you can, just change your flight, come with me. And I was like, let me call. And this wasn't all in one day, but I ended up, a few days prior, I was like, a few days after, I ended up calling the airline and saying it was a family emergency. I had to move some things around. They ended up, giving me a whole new flight for free.
Whoa.
And I think, why? Because they had changed the flight anyways. Uh-huh. So it was kind of my free ticket to like use that as leverage and say so I ended up booking it like 4 days prior, and got there a little early, and then got to hang out with Second City, and he had a bunch of shows. He got to play at Ushuaia. He got to play at one of the other beach clubs there. So it was really cool, networking with him and just walking around and experiencing Ibiza with like all the major artists,
Oh man. Yeah.
So that was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
That was a ton of fun. Just being in a whole nother country. And then I ended up getting booked at the Hard Rock out in Ibiza.
While you were there?
At the rooftop, yeah. I got to play at like sunset. It was like the most classic Ibiza. There was like a rooftop party. I was playing some like loungy disco kind of house, and it was so cool. As the sun was setting, it was like a beautiful sunset at the Hard Rock.
And was that booked while you were there or prior?
Yeah, no. Wow. I just like
just meeting people.
My buddy actually. Shout out to my buddy Levi.
Yeah.
He ended up meeting a girl. Classic Levi, just talking to he's like the most social butterfly in like the coolest way.
Yeah.
Ended up talking to a girl like on a beach run or something, and she was a promoter for another company that booked at the Hard Rock, which Ushuaia owns, which is really cool. So yeah, she's like, hey, we actually had a cancellation with one of our DJs. He can't fly in or couldn't make it. And I was like, sign me up, let's go.
That's sick.
That was fun.
Wow.
That was cool. Just even to touch decks in Ibiza is like, yes, I did it. I got to actually play in Ibiza. You know, it's just like a classic thing, you know?
That's good, man. So, yeah, so highlights the some of the shows you did, and then getting booked in Ibiza and getting out there. I mean, Ibiza is an amazing destination, by the way.
Ibiza for all the UK people, because they all the Brits get mad if I say Ibiza, but all the American people are like, why do you have a lisp? So there's no right or wrong. I can't get it right, but Ibiza or Ibiza, either one.
No, but this place is huge. It's like like a Vegas or a Miami type destination for
bigger.
Yeah, way bigger though.
Way bigger. Every team that does anything related to dance music is there in the summer.
That's cool. Yeah.
Everybody, like Martin Garrix plays on like a Wednesday, Calvin Harris plays on a Thursday, David Guetta plays on a Friday. Like, I mean, those are just like the main artists, but literally everybody that does dance music is there in the summer because it's like the place to be.
Yeah.
That's how big, like, it shits on Vegas and Miami and all these places because it is like the place to be in the summer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's sick.
So.
Well, geez, man. Well, we've spent this whole time talking about positive, awesome things.
Come on.
We got to keep it real, though. What would you say is the biggest challenge from this past year?
Yeah, and I think that's really, really important because most artists are, they're going to have a lot of challenges, right? And I think I've honestly touched on that in this already, but I think the biggest challenge is yourself, honestly. When you boil it down, it's like, you're going to get stuff from labels that's like, yeah, it's not what we're looking for, man. Like, good luck. Yeah. And you can't be like, man, I'm inadequate. I didn't make a track that the label wants to sign. Like, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter what other people think. It matters what you think and what you're going to do with your music, what you're going to do with your passion, whatever it is, how you're going to show up every day and be positive and be stoked and be creative and, do you. So I guess to answer the question, like the challenges for me have been, really not releasing a lot of music this year. Because in the past, year prior or the year prior after that, I had much more releases. So I think I was shooting my shots a little too big, thinking, hey, I'm up there. I should be able to get these shots. But I think just being real this year and taking action and just start releasing a lot more stuff. And keeping the vibes high, right?
Yeah. And was it like you putting out less volume because you thought that the few that you did release would have been bigger hits?
No. So there's a few things. I mean, I had a lot of projects with singers that I was working with. So those would kind of go back and forth. And some I'm still working on currently. So yeah, I mean, there's a few variables. So like getting projects through the finish line, getting them done, and then actually doing the label outreach that I need to do. Yeah. So like some of that stuff I didn't even get to, and then some of the stuff I did get to, where I'm like, hey, I'm emailing Spinning Records, I'm emailing Insomniac, and then I just don't hear back. Usually I just don't hear back, which means like either they didn't listen to my track, or they're just not interested and they just didn't write back, which is fine. It's like, okay, who cares? Let me send it to other labels. Sure. Let me get my shit out, because that's the biggest thing. When you're an independent artist, like it all comes down to you. It's not like you have an agency that's like, all right, we got this one for Monday. You're doing this show on Wednesday. Next Friday, you're here. And then next month we have this release. Like literally when you're with an agency, they have everything laid out for you for like 8 sometimes even a year in advance. They already know what show you're playing next New Year's before this New Year's even happens. Like sometimes that's how advanced they are. And your release schedule is like already full for 8 months. Like 8 months out, they're already releasing stuff. Jeez. So having that team support is obviously something I really want to look forward to and get at some point. But at the same time, I need to take action this next year and just start putting stuff out, building more content, like maybe not playing the small shows, but really focusing on like the big shows and a lot of emphasis behind those big shows.
Sure.
And yeah, just putting my music out, man, and just keep growing. Right? Yep. There's no end to this game. No. There's either growth or death. Sure. It's like which one I'm going to pick, you know? So
I love it.
There's always going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
And it's really how you show up and face the challenge.
Right.
You know. So.
Well, that's good shit, man. Thank you for sharing all this stuff. It's such a cool journey to watch, especially from my perspective as your friend and seeing, knowing you from before where you're at now. That was much different, right?
Right.
You've just grown so much in the past couple of years, and it's so cool to see.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. But I do want to ask, who is one person or one or two people you think I should interview? I'm trying to, build a network by doing this podcast and
somebody's putting mail on my mailbox.
Oh, yeah. That's nice.
You're like, who's coming to the door,
yeah.
man?
I thought it was a dog. But who do you think is somebody I should interview? It could be someone from the music community or elsewhere, but I'm looking for people who are doing their own thing.
Of course, man. And I think that's a good question. I mean, I'd love, maybe you could interview my buddy DJ Susan. There's also who else would be cool that's maybe not even in music, just kind of like an entrepreneur. Maybe you could interview like Host Stevie. He's really crushing it with his surf brand here.
Okay.
Who else, man? I mean, I think maybe for your podcast, just interviewing different types of people that are in different careers, different mindsets, maybe different entrepreneurs, right? That are really focused on what they're doing and hear what they have to say. So yeah, I mean, I think Host Stevie, DJ Susan, maybe even Chase that works with blenders. He might be pretty busy, but
that would be sick. Yeah. I love those classes.
Talk about blenders, man. Yeah, he's grown his company to, being a over $100 million business, which is really cool. Just a PB guy.
I didn't realize it was that big.
It's big, dude. Yeah, and they've teamed up with a lot of other brands too now.
Yeah.
LSKD is one of the other brands they partner with. So it's really cool, man. Like, it's that guy lives a few blocks away from us, so it's really cool to see all the people crushing it that are around our age that are just really doing their thing. So
yeah, for real, man. Cool, man. Well, I'll follow up with you on those guys. I'd love to get those guys on. But where can people find you on social media, your music?
Yep. So just on Spotify, it's just Maximo, Maximo. Usually the first one that pops up, hopefully. There's also a few other people that are named Maximo, but I'm usually the first one on there. Yeah. And then for Instagram, it's Maximo's House. So just my name, S. Yep. Like my house, and then house at the end. Yeah. Nice. So Maximo's House, and then I have Apple Music too.
Bro, I'm not gonna lie. My workout today, I was stoked for this interview, so I was listening to all your stuff on Apple Music. Dude.
I love it, man.
Yeah, it's getting me going.
Good.
That's
yeah. Sick. And then obviously SoundCloud too. I believe it's just Maximo's House on SoundCloud. So
nice.
A lot of stuff, all the same music on there. Yeah. But yeah, man. It's gonna be a good year. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, of course,
stoked,
bro.
Man. Let's just keep the energy high, the vibe high, and let's work hard, dude.
Let's do it, man. I love it, dude.
Going to the new year. Let's go.
Max, I appreciate you, man. Keep this shit up. This is so exciting.
Thank you, Chris, man. Thank you for having me. Let's go.
Of course, brother. All right. Bye, everybody.
Peace out.
Thank you for joining our conversation today on the Nichols and Dimes Show. Please check out and follow my podcast Instagram at Nichols and Dimes Show. I'd love to have you subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also find it on my website. I welcome and encourage any feedback you can share in the reviews so I can continue to improve and develop the show. Thanks again, and see you next time.